All right. Welcome, everyone, to a new deep dive.
Hello.
Today, we're looking at something pretty interesting. It's excerpts from a motivational speech Arnold Schwarzenegger gave. You can find it floating around on YouTube.
That's right. And we're not trying to cover his whole life story or anything. The focus is really on the core ideas he presents in this specific speech about how he thinks success is achieved.
Exactly. So our mission today is just to unpack the principles he lays out right there in that material. We want to see what the key takeaways are and maybe figure out what insights you might be able to use for your own goals.
Yeah, it's about his framework. And it's interesting because he boils it down to just a couple of key rules he believes drove his, everything. Bodybuilding, acting, even his political career.
He doesn't mess around, gets straight into it. So let's dive into that first rule he talks about. It's fundamentally says, have a vision.
Mm-hmm. And he immediately contrasts it with the alternative. Like, what happens you don't have a vision?
You just drift. That's the word he uses. Floating around aimlessly.
And if you're just drifting, well, you never really get anywhere specific, do you? You're just sort of moving.
He makes it personal, uses his own story from the speech, talks about growing up in Austria right after the war.
Yeah, and feeling like he just didn't belong there. He knew, apparently, pretty early on that he wanted something different, wanted out.
But his parents, he mentions, had their own vision for him. You know, stay put, marry a local girl, have a quote-unquote normal life.
But he stresses that was their dream, their vision, not his. He felt destined for something else.
He uses words like special, unique, big, even if he didn't know exactly what big meant at first.
Right. And then comes the clarity. He talks about being, 11 years old in school.
Yeah, and seeing a documentary about America, the huge buildings, the freeways, just the sheer scale of it all.
Compared to post-war Austria, it must have been mind-blowing. And he says in that moment, he just knew deep down, that's where I belong. That's where I want to be.
Wow. And then another piece falls into place not long after. He's walking by a shop, goes inside.
And finds a bodybuilding magazine, and on the cover is Reg Park.
Reg Park, Mr. Universe, movie star, Hercules.
Exactly. And Arnold describes reading that magazine and feeling like, bang, this is it. This is the blueprint for my life.
So it goes from this vague feeling of wanting more to suddenly having this incredibly sharp picture.
Totally. Become a champion bodybuilder just like Reg Park. Get into movies like Reg Park. Make millions. Be rich. Famous. The whole package.
And he really emphasizes how good that felt. You know, having that clear direction. He contrasts it with most people who he sees as still searching, still kind of drifting without that clear end goal.
And critically, this wasn't just a nice feeling. He argues that this clear vision is what makes the hard work possible, even enjoyable.
Right. He talks about training 5-6 hours every single day, which sounds insane.
It does. But he says because he knew why he was doing it, aiming for that Mr. Universe title, shooting for gold, as he puts it, it didn't feel like a chore. It felt fun.
Because every rep, every lift, it was a step closer.
Mm-hmm. A measurable step towards that very specific goal. It gave the grind meaning.
He even throws out a statistic. He heard something like 74% of people in America hate their jobs, and similar in Europe.
Yeah, he brings it up. And he directly links that dissatisfaction to the drifting. You know, people just taking whatever job comes along out of need, not because it fits into some larger personal vision.
He felt blessed, he says, because he knew his path. He compares it to, like, a medical student. They know the years of study are tough, but there's a clear goal at the end.
That purpose makes the difficulty bearable, maybe even motivating.
And he applies this same logic to his political career later on.
Yeah.
He says he had a very specific vision. Governor of California.
Right. Knowing he couldn't aim for president because he wasn't born in the U.S., governor was his ultimate political target.
And people apparently told him, start smaller, run for mayor or something.
But nope. He stuck to that big, clear vision, ran for governor, and according to him in the speech, won it relatively quickly. He sees that as proof, the power of having that laser focus.
Okay, so rule number 1, based purely on this speech, you need that vision. It's your North Star.
Absolutely. Which leads us right into rule number 2. And this one's maybe even tougher for some people.
Don't listen to the naysayers.
Exactly. He says this was just a constant soundtrack to his life, whatever he tried to do.
The message was always the same. That's impossible. You can't do that. Or just a flat no.
All the time. But he talks about how he learned to basically flip it in his own mind.
How so?
Well, he says when someone told him it can't be done, he heard it can be done. When they said no, he heard yes. impossible became possible.
He almost reprogrammed his reaction to negativity.
Yeah, like an internal translation system. He even mentions Nelson Mandela, the quote about how everything is always impossible until someone does it.
And Arnold's mindset was basically, okay, fine, I'll be the someone.
He wasn't going to let the fact that it hadn't been done stop him. He actually says he used their doubt as fuel.
Fuel for what?
For the work. Putting in those gym hours, sure, but also later, studying English for hours, taking accent removal classes, acting lessons, all while people were saying, you'll never make it in Hollywood with that body and that accent.
And he admits there were setbacks. He mentions his first movie, Hercules in New York.
Oh yeah, he says it went right into the toilet, his words.
Huh. But even with a flop like that, and people surely pointing fingers, he didn't let it kill the vision. The naysayers didn't win.
And this is where it gets really interesting. He gives these concrete examples of things people specifically attacked as, like liabilities, weaknesses.
Okay.
Like his physique for acting. People told him wrong time for that body, muscles aren't in, it just couldn't be sold, they said. But then came Conan the Barbarian. Huge hit. And he quotes the director, John Milius, who apparently said something like, if we wouldn't have had Arnold, we would have had to build one.
Whoa. So the thing they said was his biggest problem.
Was exactly what made him perfect for that breakthrough role. It wasn't a liability at all. It was his unique selling point, his key asset.
And he says the same thing happened with his accent.
For Terminator, according to Arnold, the director, James Cameron, told the press something along the lines of, if Arnold wouldn't have had that accent and talked like a machine, the movie wouldn't have worked.
Incredible. So the accent became part of the character's success.
Again, the very things people were telling him would hold him back the body. The accent, he argues, they became massive assets. And why?
Because he didn't listen.
Right. He uses some pretty strong language in the speech, says he didn't listen to those losers. It's about tuning out that external doubt.
So the message is really, you just can't let other people's limitations or negativity derail your path.
Yeah. When someone dismisses your idea, says it's dumb or impossible, he suggests you just internally think, what do you know? Maybe not say it out loud, but
Believe in your own vision more than their doubts.
Exactly. It's not about being arrogant, he implies, but about having that core conviction, that self-belief that comes from knowing your goal, your vision, filtering out the noise.
Okay, so let's recap the core ideas we've pulled just from this speech material. 2 big rules for success, according to Arnold here. First,
have a clear, powerful vision. Know exactly where you're going.
And second,
don't listen to the naysayers. Develop that internal filter to block out the negativity and the it's impossible crowd.
And you can really see how they feed each other, can't you?
Totally. The vision gives you the why, the purpose. That makes putting in the hard work feel, well, maybe not easy, but meaningful, worthwhile. Like he said, even fun sometimes.
And that sense of purpose, that deep belief in your goal, that's what gives you the strength, the backbone to actually ignore the doubters.
Right. It anchors you when people are trying to tell you you're crazy or it can't be done. You have something solid to hold on to your vision.
So, bringing it back to you, listening now, thinking about these ideas from the speech, do you feel like you have that clear blueprint Arnold talks about? Or are you maybe drifting a bit?
And perhaps more pointedly, are you letting other people's doubts, the naysayers in your life, talk you out of pursuing something important to you? Are you letting them define your limits?
Yeah. And this deep dive leaves us with, I think, a really powerful final thought, sparked by his examples of the body and the accent.
If things that others saw as definite drawbacks, as liabilities, could actually become the very keys to his unique success. Well, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
What unique quality or trait do you have right now? Something maybe you or others see as a disadvantage, a weakness, or just odd?
Could that very thing, viewed differently, actually be your secret weapon, your own unique asset, the key to achieving your version of what currently seems impossible? Something to think about.